All right. Hello, everyone. This is Megan Gieseker from ALA's Public Programs Office. Welcome to today's webinar, Best Practices for Hybrid Programming. Next slide, please. Today's webinar is presented by ALA's Public Programs Office with funding provided by the National Endowment for the Humanities as part of the American Rescue Plan Humanities Organization Grant. Any views, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this webinar do not necessarily represent those of the NEH or ALA. Next slide, please. A couple of notes about our virtual classroom. Only our presenter has microphone access during the presentation. We will be disabling the chat during the presentation and reopening it during the Q&A discussion. Please save your questions and comments for the end. If you have any technical issues, please use the Q&A window to communicate with ALA staff. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to introduce our speaker for this afternoon. Alyssa Denneler is an assistant librarian at Indiana University Bloomington, where she has worked since 2018. She manages a multidisciplinary suite of programming targeted at graduate and professional students, including events, workshops, and exhibits. Alyssa has a BA in anthropology and French from the University of Kansas and an MS-LIS from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And with that, I'd like to turn things over to Alyssa.
Thank you so much, Megan, and thank you for the Public Programs Office and also for the National Endowment for the Humanities. I am really excited to be a part of this series. If I say I'm from an instruction background, it won't surprise you that I like to talk a little bit about where I'm going today. So first, I'm going to talk about why I personally like to invest the time and resources of my library into hybrid events, and a lot of details on that. And then a little more like nitty gritty, how we make it work here and how hopefully that could transfer if you're hoping to spend a little more time with hybrid events at your institution as well. And then a literal list of do's and don'ts as advertised. So there will be some concrete takeaways for you too. And finally, as Megan mentioned, we will be opening up the chat. I have a couple questions. I'd love to hear from you all if you have a moment. So let's dive right into it. So this is a series. There are recordings online if you want to watch the rest. So I'm referencing two of them here because I'm not going to talk as many specifics as some of my colleagues did. My focus is that academic library and hopefully transferable collegiality that you can find, and also those specific do's and don'ts. If you want more of an actual run of show, my colleagues from Boston Public Library had an awesome one of those. And if you wanted more like approaches, like how do I set up a hybrid event, go check out Melissa Wong's slides. And I understand these links will be going in chat as well. So instead of starting with like institutional demographics or, what IU Bloomington is, I'm just going to tell a brief story. So I have here two photos from the same event. This was this past spring. It was an externally funded panel workshop. Well, less of a workshop and more of a lecture that was a companion to a launch of a virtual exhibit. So that's kind of a whole thing. There's a book giveaway. It was all very involved. It was so fancy. And I was just there to be the person that ran the Zoom. So I sat in the room for the event, ran the Zoom. So my colleagues did all the work. But the reason I bring up this event is, so here on the left side, you can see a screenshot of the recording of the event. So what's being shown at this precise moment is a page of the online exhibit. And then up here, of course, the librarian presenting said page. So that was kind of the view you got if you tuned in online, which several hundred folks did. And that might be too many, I'm sorry. Close to 100, I think, actually did. And on the right side here, we also, of course, had in-person attendance. And so this is a picture our communications department took. You've got a sign there advertising the event. You've got folks mingling and looking at a pop-up exhibit that accompanied this event as well. And so something I'll keep touching on today is this difference in experience that you get, that folks get from attending a hybrid event. There's going to be wildly different experience that you get if you tune in online versus if you tune in person. So I'm going to talk A, about how to mitigate that, and B, I like to keep it in mind whenever I'm planning a hybrid event. As much as possible, making this an awesome experience for everyone who joins, right? And this is why I think it's worth the work, why I've seen that it's worth the work for my colleagues. I'm often asked by colleagues anymore, what do our patrons, what do our students need, what do our faculty need? And flexibility, right? I mean, that's the case for everything right now. But the reason that hybrid continues to be a good option for a lot of reasons is that accessibility component. I work with grad students a lot. For one thing, a lot of them aren't even in town. There's lots of students who have completed their teaching portion of their program that have left Bloomington. So it gives a way for them to continue to engage with their community, right? And also just students who are disabled or not comfortable, leaving the home for whatever reason, it allows them to still join. So just continuous advocacy for accessibility. Also just convenience. I mean, this can be related and it cannot. It could just be that they can only work it into their day if they could join from their desk. So it's not going to be convenient for us as the folks hosting these events, but it is going to be convenient for our audience, and any more that is really, really key, because I'm sure a lot of you are experiencing that it can be a lot harder to retain audiences right now. Finally, just comfort. I mean, even giving this webinar, which is full virtual, is comfortable. I'm in my office. And it's just also nice for folks who can pick how they wish to engage. If folks are a little more uncomfortable with the social aspect of an in-person presentation, they don't necessarily have to take part. They could type in the chat, or they could do something else to engage. So for these three reasons, I continually find myself advocating for this being an option that is one to consider, even if it's not always the most expedient or easiest for us as staff. So I talked just a minute ago about that event and the two different experiences that you can have based on whether you attend in person or online. And one way that I like to mitigate that whenever I plan an event, and I'll talk a tiny bit more about this later too, but make sure that there's someone that you either assign or you do it yourself, or a volunteer, someone that will curate that online experience. And so what I mean by that is, much like is being done today, specifically acknowledge and thank folks in the chat, and or allow them opportunities to participate. And also announce when the Q&A opens in chat, and also make it clear that you will take questions via chat and that they will be read aloud, for example, is one way to approach it for the in-person audience. So that really helps connect the two audiences more, and I think helps the online audience feel more engaged. It can feel a little kind of second fiddle compared to the in-person folks if you don't find ways to kind of draw those connections between the two audiences. So these things are probably, I've already touched on them all already, but just for a nice concise list, I find that for hybrid events to succeed, you will need at least one other committed colleague. And this could be a friend of the library, a volunteer. It, of course, could be a colleague from across your institution or library. I would recommend, at least not the first few times, do not try to tackle a hybrid event alone. There's just so much setup and tech required. And like I mentioned, the other webinars talked more about what that exactly is. But I would always try to find someone who is excited and willing to help. The picture on the right here is an event that I've done in many formats, but this most recent year was hybrid because we actually had one of our presenters join us virtually. So just a sample of, we weren't presenting yet when the picture was taken, but a sample of kind of what one of the events I've run would look like. And related to that, this is a room we teach in a lot, this lecture hall. Having the right room is so key. It's always, good to at least know that the tech is there, even if you have to test it each time, which I'll have that on my list later. And also just the right topic. Not everything, I will be the first to say, not everything lends itself to a virtual and or hybrid event. So, smaller, more like personal receptions, of course, wouldn't be great. And things that are where if the presenters aren't comfortable, then I wouldn't recommend it. You shouldn't force the issue if you have folks who just aren't comfortable with the technology and willing to experiment. It just won't be helpful or happy for anyone. So if you have all of three of these things, I would say go for it. You should absolutely try hybrid and see if you can increase your audience that way. So why am I talking about hybrid events? For me, I'm one of a handful of folks in the libraries where running events is in my job description. There's other folks, there's administration folks, there's folks up in IT that are also charged with running events. But in terms of the main library, there's not a whole lot of librarians that have the description. So a lot of my colleagues will come to me when they have an idea for an event and they want help running it. So again, this don't go it alone theme keeps coming back. For my part, what I run is the Scholars Commons Workshop series, which workshop is used in a super broad sense here and can be anything from a panel session about an exhibit that's currently up to hands-on, like actually working with citation management. And so at the bottom here is just 3 images that are examples of some of the series that are run through that workshop series, just so you get an idea of what I'm on about. So that's why I frequently find myself in the room for hybrid events, is I've just done a lot of them, and it's actually in my job description to do events, which is helpful. Okay, so more concrete things. I have them split into 3 categories: before, during, and after. So first, for before, I already referenced this: test your tech every single time. I am sorry to say it, but you're just gonna have to check. Someone mucked with a knob, they messed with a setting, the computer died. Even if I've taught in a room 10 times, I will still test it. So I wish I could tell you otherwise. And also, this is a little more niche, but I have found, so, and this is easier now too, that if you have SpringShare products or other similar ones, you can take 2 types of registration, both virtual and in person. So that helps, I find, but especially early on when we were just starting to host hybrid events, I would find I got emails fairly frequently of folks confused about whether they registered to come in person or online, or if it mattered. So just make it really clear in your promo that that's what this is, that you can choose, and that you just tell us your choice and we'll be happy. Just so folks don't get, confused, overwhelmed, and maybe don't end up wanting to come because they don't understand the event. And relatedly, just make sure that whoever is coming for the event, if it's not you, knows the plan. My colleague in administration, who just left IU but was with me for several years, like to call it run of show. And I really like that phrase. It sounds fancy and exciting, but basically just have a plan that all of you are aware of, in terms of like who's going to run this, or who's going to manage that, or what's going to happen, who's in charge if there's a tech issue, for example. So those would be my 3 major tips, like before the event actually starts. And then my don't, I think you've already gotten the gist of, find some friends to help. So for during, and this has been done for this event, if you want to see a sample, if you haven't used them before, but enable those auto captions. Zoom has them, obviously. Even PowerPoint has a way to do it now. We can't really afford a captioner for anything but the most high dollar of events. So I'm not going to say pay for a captioner. The auto captions will do for kind of a minimum level of accessibility. And again, specifically tell people, okay, you're going to do the in-person, you're going to do the online, and so that you have someone who is in charge of the experience for both modalities. And don't be afraid to say something if there's technology issues. This applies to the audience too. Thank you for whoever did that earlier for this virtual event. But also just in general, like even if it feels like it's interrupting the session, it's better just to address it and fix it and make the overall end experience better for everyone. And the other don't is, it seems a little specific, but I've had it happen several times. Presenters get really concerned. Oh no, no one joined online, or oh no, there's no one sitting in the room. And they get really hyper focused on it. And then they kind of want to like derail the run of show that we have. And my recommendation is just pretend like you have both audiences. Usually folks will either roll in, or furthermore, one audience won't even really notice that the other audience isn't necessarily there. And that sounds bad, but it's better just to tackle it from, we're just going to run this event how we plan to run this event, rather than try to rejigger it in the 5 minutes before the event starts. So that's my don't recommendation for during the event. This is kind of a correlated piece. I get a lot of questions from my colleagues, should we record this event? And my answer is usually yes, with some notable exceptions. I don't know about your library, but here we have a lot of like 1 semester initiatives. And so often we'll have speakers or professors, whoever, come to campus or come to the library for these events, right? And so those are awesome, but often there's a lot of talk at the start about this particular initiative, this awesome thing that's happening this semester. And sometimes those are good to keep, and sometimes they're just not. They don't apply in the future. So something like that that's tied to a particular initiative, I would not record. And so I'm sorry, I'm starting on the not side here, apparently I'm feeling negative today. I would record them if they were not time sensitive like that. I love collecting opportunities for asynchronous learning to put on our website, to put elsewhere. It's also just nice for portfolios of speakers, especially grads and postdocs who come to speak. So definitely record those if the presenters are comfortable. And that's always my point across the board here is always check, not like at the second the event starts, but like check ahead with your presenters to make sure that they're okay with a recording, because we've had folks who definitely were not interested. And then finally, the last set of events I usually don't recommend recording for are like little discussions, like if it's a little book club or round table, or if folks are more likely to share like personal information. That Supercharge event that I referenced earlier, Supercharge Your Dissertation, often students are sharing personal, trials and tribulations with their research. And so I always make it very clear to those attendees that I am not going to record this event because I want it to be a space for you to share. And I don't want you to worry that your mentor or your advisor will see this at some later time. So things like that. And not only do I not record them, I make sure to say, I will not be recording this. So it's definitely a balancing act. But I do find that these things they fall into categories like these that make you able to make decisions. Okay, so finally for after, so I'm sure a lot of you have done assessment for events of many types. And all I like to remind my colleagues is that you can still do assessment for a hybrid events. I like Qualtrics. You don't have to use Qualtrics. I mean, Google Forms works just as well. And QR codes are back and bigger than ever. So I just like a QR code and then a link. And you can throw that link in chat. You can throw the QR code on a slide. Just have people pull it up on their phones and do it really fast at the end of the event. I find that usually folks aren't bothered by it as long as you keep it 3 to 5 questions. And the feedback is super helpful and also really nice for colleagues to have for their portfolios, dossiers, what have you. So I still do assessment for virtual and hybrid events. And finally, this is another tip from my colleague who just left our administration. She also would do this practice called a debrief meeting. And I have found those so nice. They don't have to be complicated. They don't have to be long. She would schedule for like half an hour, and I've started doing this too. And just whoever you worked with for that event, especially if they're new partners that you haven't worked with before, just set up a really quick meeting to A, thank them, and B, just have them tell you what went well and what didn't go well, and take notes. And keep those notes. And then it's really nice to kind of build a portfolio of remembering what you did and remembering what you can do in the future.